Great pleasure to welcome the members and staff and guests to the September meeting of the members of the authority. The agenda is deceptively short. I suspect it's not going to be nearly as short as it appears. That seems to happen to us a fair percentage of the meetings. Thank you all for being here. I know that the weather's bad where some of you are. Hold on, let me, there. Because we are electronic and digital, it is necessary to have certain declarations read into the record. Sarah, will you do that?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chair. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 health emergency and the extension of the executive order, which suspends certain provisions of the public officers law, including the open meetings law, this board is meeting today via Zoom. The notices have been duly posted and members of the public have been given the information so that they may join by telephone or by video to see and hear the proceedings of this meeting. A transcript will be posted on the DASNY website as soon as practicable after this meeting, and the webcast should be available this afternoon or tomorrow. And I will now take the roll of those present. For board members from DASNY, we have our chair, Al Carney, vice chair, Jerry Romsky, treasurer, Beryl Snyder, Secretary Beryl Snyder, John Gardner, Joan Sullivan, Janice McKinney, Wellington Chen, Lisa Gomez, Adrian Swazerski, Phyllis Morris, and Ken Evans. From staff from DASNY, we have our president, Ruben McDaniel, Paul Koopman, Nadine Fontaine, Kim Ellis, Portia Lee, Steve Currow, Caroline Griffin, Ricardo Salomon, Dina Amodio, Matt Bergen, Steve Kozier, Craig Schreivogel, Jenna Flinton, Jeffrey Gordon, Deb Fasser, and Amanda Nazario. Dina Amodio is also with us from counsel's office. From outside counsel, we have Melissa Bennett from Barclay Damon, Joseph C. Reed from the law offices of Joseph C. Reed, Jeff
Sarah, if you can hear me, it looks like you.
Yes, looks like she froze.
Got frozen.
Mr. Chairman, with no offense to the public, she has called the roll for the board members and the staff. So if you want to continue, let's do that.
Well, I'd love for her to get back on, but I mean, give her a minute or two. Thank you. She may have to go out and come in again.
But it looks like she's trying to do it.
Give her a minute. Amanda, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Are you backing her up with regard to the minutes? Or is it simply recording that from which I'll write the minutes?
I'll handle whatever you need me to handle.
Well, I just don't know how you do it. I don't want to get back into the meeting until she's on, if we need her for a specific minutes related purpose.
Looks like Sarah's connecting now.
Mhm.
Terrific.
I apologize for that. I'm not sure when I froze. Did you hear my
You froze at Joseph Reed.
Okay, well, I was almost done. That was good timing then. So Jeffrey Pohl and Chris Reitzel have joined us from Nixon, and Alethea Nanku is also present. We're also joined today by several members of the public. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it back over to you.
Sarah, thank you. And welcome to the members of the public who've joined us today. The first order of business, of course, is to take a glance at the minutes of the special board meeting, which was on 10 August, and then to make decisions about approving them. Has everybody had a chance to read them? Hearing no comment, I assume everybody has. Are there any suggestions for revisions, deletions, additions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes?
I make the motion. It's Joan.
Thank you, Joan. Is there a second?
You got it, Al. Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes for the August 10 special board meeting. I'm sorry, my notes are a little bit screwy here. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes pass and the resolution passes and the minutes are approved unanimously. Mr. Romsky, the second agenda item, the Finance Committee report.
Chair, we met yesterday by way of Zoom. We adopted the special meeting minutes from the August meeting of the Finance Committee. We then advanced and I guess we approved and recommend certain changes to the guidelines. And then we advanced to the Rochester Institute of Technology offering that's on today's calendar. And after some discussion, we unanimously agreed to recommend that that be approved at today's board meeting. And unless anyone has any questions or any concerns, that concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Any questions for Jerry? Hearing none, we move on to the adoption of documents. The first being raise the age. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see everyone this morning and welcome to the DASNY board meeting. Behind tab 3 is the raise the age transaction summary update. Melissa Bennett, Esquire Barclay Damon, and Joseph C. Reed, Esquire of Joseph C. Reed Law Offices will be presenting. Good to see you, Mr. Reed. Matt Bergen is also available to answer questions from DASNY.
Joe, it's Al Carney. Before you and Melissa start, it's great to have you back at the table, figuratively.
Thank you both, and good to see you both, and glad you're doing well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I just wanted to give a brief update. The ratings of AA2 from Moody's for the bonds has been confirmed. And with that, I will hand the presentation over to Melissa and Joe.
Excellent, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you and good morning. As further detailed in our letter to the board, before you for consideration is the adoption of a new Raise the Age Revenue Bond Financing Program bond resolution, authorizing the issuance of multiple series of bonds at one or more times, and the adoption of a series resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $22 million of Raise the Age Revenue Bond Financing Program revenue bonds for the benefit of Albany County. I'll now turn it over to my co-counsel, Joe Reed, to talk about the general resolution and the series resolution.
Good morning. Thank you, Melissa. The general resolution is a new resolution based on DASNY's new model resolution and constitutes the agreement between DASNY and the holders of the bonds issued under it, and contains the basic terms that apply to each series of bonds issued thereunder. The series resolution authorizes the issuance of up to 22 million aggregate principal amount of bonds in one or more series or at one or more times for the benefit of Albany County, and delegates to authorize officers of DASNY the power, among others, to determine the final terms of the bonds subject to certain limitations described in our letter. and authorizes the entry into a financing agreement or agreements that and other customary transaction documents. The bonds will be special obligations of DASNY payable solely from the revenues pledged to the bonds, which are primarily payments made by Albany County under the applicable financing agreement, and the monies and investments held in funds and accounts established with respect to the series of bonds, as well as the pledge made by Albany County of its pledged revenues, consisting of funds payable by the State Office of Children and Family Services to Albany County. Back to Melissa. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. The financing agreement will require Albany County to make payments in amounts and at times sufficient to make timely payments on the DASNY bonds, regardless of whether Albany County receives reimbursement from the Office of Children and Family Services. Pursuant to the DASNY RTA legislation described in our letter, the financing agreement will not constitute indebtedness of Albany County for purposes of the state constitution or section 20 of the local finance law. And the obligation of Albany County to make payments under the financing agreement will be subject to annual appropriation by Albany County. The financing agreement is not a general obligation of Albany County, and neither the faith and credit nor the taxing power of Albany County are pledged to the payment of any amount due or to become due under the financing agreement. Albany County's obligation to make the financing repayments due under the financing agreement and any other amounts due to DASNY under the financing agreement will, however, be supported by the statutory intercept mechanism of the program that was established by the DASNY RTA legislation. Joe and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do the members have any questions for Matt, Melissa, and Joe? Matt, again, congratulations on the rating. Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
I will move. This is Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Joan.
Joan, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries, the resolution is approved, and it's approved unanimously. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 4, we have a resolution to proceed with the Rochester Institute of Technology. The transaction summary for RIT is located behind tab 4, and Steve Kozer is here to present. Steve?
Thank you. Good morning. The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for a fixed and/or variable rate, tax exempt and/or taxable bond issue with a not to exceed amount of $120 million on behalf of the Rochester Institute of Technology. RIT's main campus is in Henrietta, New York, a suburb of Rochester, and it offers approximately 25 associate degree programs, 78 bachelor's degree programs, 75 master's degree programs, and 8 PhD programs. DASNY has issued approximately $912 million on behalf of RIT through 19 series of bonds, beginning with the Series A bonds issued in 1965. The Series 2022 bonds are expected to be used to construct an approximately 26,000 square foot research building and an athletic stadium with approximately 50,000 square foot of interior space. Bond proceeds will also be used for the rehabilitation and renovation of academic and residential buildings throughout the main campus, including roof improvements and replacements, and the renewal, replacement, and expansion of existing heating and cooling infrastructure. The bonds are expected to have a Moody's rating of A1 and will be a general obligation of the university. Enrollment has increased over the past 5 years, reaching an all-time high head count of 19,718 students in the fall of 2021. The mean SAT score for entering freshmen in 2021 was 1348, also an all-time high. Operating revenue is relatively diversified, with 52% of 2021 total operating revenue coming from net tuition and fees. RIT continues to have positive operating results. Over the last 5 years, the average change in net assets from operations was approximately $18.5 million. The operating margin in 2021 was 8.3% compared to the DASNY median of 3.2%. The university's net assets increased from $1.2 billion in 2017 to $1.9 billion in 2021, and the university's liquidity ratios compare favorably to the DASNY medians. Cash and investments to operating expenses was 3.1 to 1 in 2021 compared to the DASNY median of 2.2 to 1. In conclusion, RIT's debt service coverage ratio was 4.5 to 1 in 2021. Mr. Chairman.
Steve, thank you. A very well-run education institution. Are there questions for Steve? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to adopt the resolution?
I make a motion to move to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Janice. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Beryl.
Beryl, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. The resolution is passed unanimously. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DASNY had quite busy August compared to other Augusts typically. So I'll give you a little bit of an update on things that were happening at DASNY during the month. On the cannabis front, as you know, later in the meeting, you will be asked to approve the limited partnership agreement. This will allow this program to move forward with raising capital, leasing properties, and beginning to build out facilities for the first adult use cannabis, recreational adult use cannabis dispensaries in the state of New York. This program is in association with what the Office of Cannabis Management is calling CARD, which is a conditional adult use recreational dispensary license. This geared toward helping folks who have been affected by the war on drugs to be able to participate in the industry in a good and legal way. We're looking for candidates who have had difficulty because of their overcharging at some point in their life, and now become good citizens and business people. And really the real difficulty they've had generally has been access to capital. And so this program really helps solve that problem. We're very excited about it. We have been working behind the scenes prior to the LPA being signed and agreed to begin identifying potential locations for these facilities. Our goal is to have 150 facilities throughout the state. Right now, we're in active conversations with about 50 landlords, talking terms and rents and those types of things. Once we pass the LPA, we'll in earnest begin looking at leases and entering those leases. Our hope is to begin breaking ground on facilities no later than October the 1st, with the first facilities opening at the beginning of the year. So very excited about that program, and we'll have more to talk about the LPA later in the meeting. Second, I was pleased to join several DASNY staff members for a power luncheon that was hosted by State Senator James Sanders. He has a monthly meeting to help MWBEs work around the state. And in this conversation, we talked about how MWBEs could partner with DASNY in our procurement. So I want to thank Michael Clay, Matt Moore, who's the head of procurement, Kara Mallard, and Kristen Costello. They joined me on this conference. We had a great back and forth with about 135 participants, very successful support of State Senator Sanders and the MWBEs throughout the state. I also had the chance to stop by some new construction at SUNY New Paltz. We are building a dorm, actually a true rehab of a dorm, gut renovation. Right now, the building has been gutted fairly completely. We're also adding another story to the building. We had a chance to meet with our project manager, Steve Curl joined me, and it was great to see that project. SUNY New Paltz is a great client of ours, and there's a lot of great work we've done on that campus for the students, and this is just another great project for DASNY. Governor Hochul also announced the state's commitment to the Schaumburg Center in Harlem. We're administering an $8 million grant, as well as providing the design services for actually replacing all of the windows in this historic building. There's a central point in Harlem, New York City, and New York State. So it's great to be recognized by the governor. A lot of the DASNY folks were at the presentation. Another great day for DASNY to show off a little bit the good work that we do. In our October meeting, I'm going to request and ask each of the board members to join us in New York City in person. We're going to have a recognition for board member John Johnson. We will do something for him after the committee meetings on Tuesday, and again at the board meeting. We have some resolutions, some proclamations from the governor and other things to do. So I really ask you to put that on your calendar to come down with us in person. After the finance committee meeting on Tuesday, we'll have a small reception, and again, we'd love to have all board members in attendance if you are available. He was at the board for 21 years himself. His father and grandfather were both board members, and so just a great family legacy. I'd love to honor John. He and his wife will be down. We're trying to get one or two of his family members to come as well. So that will be a fantastic event. And again, I just hope everyone can join us in person for that celebration of John Johnson and his family's dedication to DASNY. And then finally, you have in your board package the board calendar draft. It is draft, so please check that calendar, see if there are any specific conflicts you know of now, so you can let us know. We spent quite a bit of time developing the calendar based on a couple of things. The PACB board schedule, we try to coincide with that, try to take into account various holidays, but it's certainly imperfect. So if you have some conflicts or need some additional information about different board dates for 23, please let Sarah Richards know. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't emphasize enough the need to get the scheduling conflicts clear to the staff as quickly as possible. We want to have at the very least a quorum at every meeting, but we also want to make sure that we can cover off everything we need to cover off with the various forms of expertise on the board. If you figure out that you can't make one of those meetings, please let staff know so that they can plan around that or move the meeting if it's necessary. The other thing that you said, the other things you said, Ruben, were about John Johnson. I was going to wait till the end of the meeting to do this, but I cannot describe, because I don't have the words to describe, the colleagueship and later the friendship that developed between John and me. He was a resource and a very willing resource. He brought history to my head about DASNY, and I often thought that our roles should have been reversed. He is an extraordinary man, and he cared deeply for DASNY, deeply for DASNY. So if you can make the October 11th afternoon event, this is for the members and staff. It would be great to have as many of you as possible there. We could talk about it. Happy to tell you what the plans are. They're minimal. We're not looking to do very much except to celebrate John. And there may be an opportunity for a couple of 3 people to say a few words. We'll figure it all out. But please, if you can do it, please be in New York City on the 11th after the finance committee meeting. That's it, Mr. President. We then go to tab 6, I believe, the public finance report.
Thank you very much. So included in the members' materials are the standard public finance reports. There is one resolution for the members' consideration. Included in the members' materials are the guidelines for the sale of bonds. Staff is proposing revisions to the guidelines to modify the underwriter RFP cycle from 2 years with 2 6-month renewals to 3 years with 1 1-year renewal. We're also making certain conforming changes for naming conventions. Staff believes that the changes to the RFP cycle are reasonable. Mr. Chairman, we have a resolution for consideration.
I'm sorry. And again, thank you to Amanda Nazario for marking the resolutions for me so that I don't forget. Of course, I overlooked this one. Sorry, Amanda, thank you. The resolution is at the very end of the information in the tab. It's a very simple resolution. If you've not had a chance to read it, take a minute now. If you have read it, I'll give you a second, just because it was the last page, you may not have seen it. All right. Are there any questions about the resolution itself or Portia's presentation? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
You got it out. Go ahead, John. Sorry. I'll second it.
Oh,
However you'd like to handle that, Al.
We'll figure that out. But thank you both very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the resolution passes. I'm sorry, the motion is approved and the resolution passes unanimously. The financial, Kimberly.
And just to go through a few updates for the board since the last.
Oh, I'm
board-
sorry.
No, quite all right. Since the last board meeting, we priced Barnard Yeshiva. There was a second part of the MSK transaction and the school district's refunding. We priced Barnard and Yeshiva at the end of June and school district refunding at the end of August. The market's been volatile this summer with ebbs and flows, but August was particularly volatile. All of our deals priced well and the clients were pleased. As I've noted at previous board meetings, in an effort to combat inflation, the Fed has been raising rates. The Fed raised rates by 75 basis points at its July meeting, and another rate hike is expected at the September meeting. Total year-to-date new issue volume for 2022 is approximately 280 billion, down from approximately 320 billion, or 12.7% from last year's comparable volume. This week's supply is expected to be in line with recent averages at about 6 billion. Tax-exempt bond yields increased on Tuesday, with the 10-year AAA and MD increasing by 5 basis points to close at 2.72, and the 30-year increasing by 7 basis points to close at 3.48. U.S. government bond yields were higher, with the 10-year yield increasing by 13 basis points to 3.33, and the 30-year Treasury yield increasing by 14 basis points to 3.49. Municipal bond flows have reported outflows for the week ending August 31st after reporting outflows the previous week. Since the June 22nd board meeting, the 1-year MMD rate has increased by 56 basis points, the 10-year has decreased by 19 basis points, and the 30-year has increased by 10 basis points. In that same time period, the 10-year Treasury yield has increased by 2 basis points, and the 30-year Treasury yield has increased by 10 basis points. Also included in the members' materials are bond sales summaries, which include performance metrics, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there questions, Portia? Thank you, Portia. We will now go to tab 7. Kimberly Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Included in your report is the monthly financial report. And as you'll see, the personnel expenses are slightly under projection. However, you see that health insurance is slightly over projection, which is mainly due to an increase in retiree health insurance based on the increased number of retirees we anticipated. Non-personnel expenses are also slightly over projection, but that's just due to timing of certain transfers. We've closed on 3 private debt issuances in June and July and received $1 million in financing fees through July. The percentage of direct hours charged to public clients is slightly up at 95.2% against a budget of 93.1%. Also included in your materials is the quarterly investment report for the period ending 6/30/2022. The overall portfolio decreased by approximately $600 million, primarily due to construction expenditures offset by new money bond issuances. And due to improvements in short-term agency rates, the portfolio saw a shift of $5.2 billion from money markets into agency securities. And lastly, just an update on our financial statement audit for 2022. KPMG is wrapping up the audit of the approximately 16 individual financial statements, and they're expected to issue a clean opinion later this month. That concludes my report.
Fingers crossed, Kim, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Um, uh, Doesn't matter. I don't remember the name of the new audit partner for our account. And we can talk about that later. There's no reason for you to remember it off the top now, but
Jeff, are you talking Jeff, Coach?
yes, yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
He got promoted. Good to
Yes.
have him. He's been on our account as a second for a number of years.
Yes, yes, so he's very familiar with our account. I'm in conversation with him periodically. We actually last spoke a couple of months ago just to see where we are with the individual financials. He's aware of the new pronouncements that we need to implement this coming fiscal year, so we're working through those as well.
Well, congratulations and good luck. Hang in there.
Thank you.
Tough time of the year to close an audit. I mean, it's always hard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there questions for Kimberly? Then we're going to go to tab 8 in the construction report. Steve.
Good morning. Thank you, Al. Quick update on a few of the programs that are very active at this time or are finishing up. I'll start with SUNY. We concluded our summer program with 14 of the 15 projects finishing in time for student occupancy. The one project that did not complete was not associated with rooms or bathrooms in the dorms. So we continue to work on that one project out at UB. Otherwise, we were quite successful with the summer program. At UAlbany, the $42 million project, this is the gut rehab of 2 low-rise residence halls and the creation of a fitness center. I visited that project in July. It's well underway. We're working on asbestos and demolition at this time, soon to be turned over for framing and construction for the rehab work. Ruben mentioned SUNY New Paltz. That's the $43 million project. Demo and asbestos moving up that building, finishing up on the 3rd and 4th floor. We started installing steel at the roof level, which will be the new 5th floor, and will also support the new roof structure. So that one's moving along rather nicely. Down at FIT, the $198 million 10-story project, it is topped off. We are up to the 8th floor with concrete decks, beginning to work on MEP trades in the lower levels. We're still about 80 days behind schedule on that project. It's not due to complete until December of 2023, so we are hoping to make up some time there. And lastly, at Alfred's Mackenzie Hall, we did receive a TCO for phase 3A back in July, and our contractor has moved on to phases 3B and 3C. For the Office of Cannabis Management, we continue to work on that program throughout the construction division. We continue with our interaction with our real estate term consultant on the dispensary site locations. We have recommended 10 design build teams to help us build out those dispensaries. We're working with DASNY term consultants on programming and fit out requirements for the dispensaries. And we identified John Savona as our team leader out of the construction division to lead all things design and construction for that program. As far as CUNY goes, that heavy workload continues. The $95 million Lehman School of Nursing also topped off. We have several projects beginning at Queens College and Hunter College, and new sizable projects at Baruch and at CCNY that are underway. Mike Stabulus and I continue to talk to our counterparts with regards to our MOU and updating that. And we continue to just seek efficiencies overall with advancing projects in that program, mostly aimed at procurement and project management tasks. The DOH lab, our design build team is still working on right sizing that building for phase 1. The overall goal is to develop a plan to fit into the $750 million budget. The reprogramming effort that the design build team is working on is targeted to finish in early October. The Office of Children and Family Services, we continue to work on the beginnings of 2 large projects, one in Suffolk County, one in Westchester County, both associated with the Raise the Age program. On the Suffolk County project, we named STV Associates as our bridging consultant for that design build project, which is a $40 million project 40-bed facility, which will include housing, recreation, education, and counseling areas. And on the Westchester County project, we're working with Westchester County on the language associated with a project management agreement at this time. That project is an $80 million project, again, design build, 80 beds, a new build, which will include housing, recreation, education, and counseling areas, as well as its own food service and medical areas. Molly Larkin and I, Molly is our upstate director of design and construction. We'll be visiting with the commissioner of OCFS in September as they've sought out DASNY for some additional work opportunities. And lastly, on the program side, the GOZER deadline to finish up our storm recovery work is this month, September of 2022. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. There are some projects that will not finish that GOZER is aware of. Two of the more challenging projects are moving forward. At Shorefront, we completed roofing on 2 sections of that building. The 3rd section will commence this month. And at 5 Towns, our contract work is nearly complete. And remediation work, due to the impact of the storm Ira last summer, the work at the Head Start program area began on August 15th and is nearing completion. The 2nd floor office remediation work will begin with GOZER's approval of our remediation contractor's cost proposal. And a couple of quick admin items on recruitments. We have still about 20 open positions, but I'm happy to report that we've concluded our search for a director of sustainability, energy and environmental services, with that successful candidate starting in mid-September. We will be coming to the board next month with a PLA request for approval for the Rochester Psychiatric Center for the Office of Mental Health. We're pulling that information together and should have it to Nadine for the board's consideration for the October board meeting. And just a couple of other OMH notes. Last week, DASNY received 15 new project requests totaled at about 35 million across the state at many of the OMH campuses. And DASNY was on hand for the Western New York Children's Psych Center groundbreaking dedication ceremony in August. This is a 2.5-year project valued at about $40 million. That concludes my report.
Steve, thank you. Are there questions for Steve? I had one, Steve. You said, I think, that you organized around 10 construction teams for the cannabis project. You've identified them, but we don't have the project yet, I know. I think you said that. Am I right about that?
Yes, we've identified 10 design build teams to move forward with the dispensary build out effort.
How big is a design build team? How many people are there?
Well, these entities are coming from a lot of different areas. Some of them are JVs where a designer or a contractor has teamed up with a design consultant and created an entity. Others are design build teams that do this, kind of for a living. How big are they? They vary in size. They can be, quite small to large nationwide type builders.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome.
Let me ask again, are there questions for Steve?
Can I just make one point of clarification? So the design build teams have been tentatively selected pending the creation of the fund. Ultimately, it's going to be the fund that's going to make the ultimate determination. They've been tentatively identified, and awards have not been submitted at this point.
We're ready when the fund is ready.
Exactly.
Thank you, Nadine.
All right. That's my term, recommendations.
Yes.
We need a recommendation for the 10.
I got it. I'm on it. Thank you. The general counsel's report is next. Nadine, may I preface it with a couple of things?
Certainly.
First of all, these are the documents that I don't know if you can, well, you can't see this. It doesn't work unless you're in the room, but these are the documents you all were kind enough to send out to us, and I assume all the board members have had a chance to take a look at them. They include a memo that you prepared, of course, the RPA, the LPA, and a note that Ruben prepared. and the members have had a chance to take a look at that. I learned yesterday that the Director of Budget has approved, the Office of Director of Budget has approved the LPA, which I thought was, great news. I don't know, I don't understand the machinations, but I can tell you that the one thing I know that means is that Adrian has done a great job for us. and I want to thank you personally, Adrian, for all the influences that you have had to get us to here. Nadine, it's your report. Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. So today we'll be seeking the board's approval to enter into a limited partnership agreement with Social Equity Impact Ventures GP1 LLC, which will be the general partner of the New York Social Equity Cannabis Investment Fund, the $200 million public-private fund, which is being established to finance the build out of the conditional adult use retail cannabis dispensaries throughout the state of New York for operation by the social equity licensees that have been selected by the Office of Cannabis Management and the New York State Cannabis Control Board. As previously reported, the state has appropriated an amount up to $50 million for investment by DASNY. The fund will be required to raise an additional amount of approximately or up to $150 million from private investors. Because the statute requires that limited partnership agreements are subject to the approval of the DASNY board, I am presenting the agreement to the board today. We have received the agreement from the general partner, and as the Mr. Chair has indicated, the budget director has also approved and is required to approve the agreement per statute. It's specifically enumerated and set forth in Public Authorities Law Section 1678-32. That provision was added during the most recent budget enacted in the 2022-23 budget. So prior to proceeding with the resolution, I wanted to address several questions that were raised during last month's board meeting when the board was presented with the walkthrough of the proposed limited partnership agreement by outside counsel. And we provided at that time a background of the program, a background of the fund, the role and responsibilities of the Office of Cannabis Management, the Cannabis Control Board, DASNY subsidiary, and the Social Equity Servicing Corporation. There were a lot of parties involved, so as a result, there was a request for a slide or organizational flow chart, so to speak, which I have prepared and was included in the materials for the board members. I don't know if we need to put that slide up or if the members have had an opportunity to review it. If they have any questions with respect to that slide.
Thank you. You don't have to put it up for me, but if somebody wants to see it, please raise your hand, whatever you do.
Okay, so then we'll proceed. Okay, so then I will address the other issues that were addressed during our last meeting. Limitations of the board's liability in the matter. In this matter, there was questions regarding limitations of liability. Under the statute, DASNY's enabling statute, there's a specific provision, section 1691(2), which provides that neither any member of the authority nor any officer, employee, or agent of the authority, while acting within the scope of their authority, shall be subject to any personal liability resulting from the exercise or carrying out of any of the authority's purposes or powers. As I indicated earlier, the statute that was enacted in the budget, section 1678-32A, specifically requires that the board members undertake the role of approving the LPA. So any claim resulting therefrom should be covered as long as the members are acting within the scope of their authority. The limited partnership agreement also provides further limits of liability in the sense that DASNY will not be liable or subject to any losses for or expense for the fund beyond the amount of its capital investment. I think during our last meeting, we reported that initial investment would be an amount up to $4 million. Since our last meeting, that amount has increased to an amount up to $20 million for the first phase of the transaction. We've increased that amount based upon the desire to fund additional dispensaries rather than the initial 4 that we proposed during our last meeting. I've also provided the board with a copy of my prior memo, which addressed the creation of the DASNY subsidiary, Social Equity Servicing Corporation, and the liabilities protections that are afforded to DASNY in the construction and support services that are going to be performed by the subsidiary as agent for the fund. So the contracts that we will be entering into with between the subsidiary and the fund as agent or the fund subsidiary will also include have the benefit of having the requisite contractual indemnification provisions to provide additional cover and support to the board. There was also a question regarding DASNY's potentially becoming a general partner because of the work of the subsidiary, the activities directly working for the fund. I have also attached a copy of the Nixon Peabody memo, which evaluated that issue. And I will also turn the board's attention to that memo. There's a provision within partnership law section 121-303, which specifically indicates that if the entity or the subsidiary are engaging in work on behalf of the partner as a vendor, that will not trigger a situation where they will become the general partner. I think there was concern about whether DASNY was taking too much of a role in serving as the servicing agent on behalf of the fund. And I think the memo clearly identifies and provides legal support to reflect that would not be the case in this situation. The next issue with respect, and I'm just touching upon these issues quickly and briefly, and I am available for any additional questions, but for the purposes of brevity, I just wanted to kind of touch upon each of these issues moving forward. So the next issue was the indemnification and defense of board members. Public Officers Law Section 18 authorizes DASNY to provide the defense and indemnification of members, officers, employees in any state or federal civil action and proceeding arising out of an alleged act or omission that occurred while in the scope of his or her employment duties. Again, approval of the LPA and any claims arising therefrom should be covered by this provision. DASNY bylaws further codifies this obligation to defend and indemnify board members. And if you look to the bylaws in section 8.1, there's a specific reference that indicates that each member, officer, and employee of DASNY, whether or not then in office, shall be indemnified by DASNY in accordance with and to the fullest extent permitted by law for the defense of or in connection with civil or criminal actions or proceedings or appeals arising out of the members, officers, employees, exercise, or carrying out of any of DASNY's purposes or powers. So that is also codified in our bylaws. With respect to insurance, we've spoken to our insurance provider and have engaged outside counsel on the indemnification issues, the D&O insurance coverage as it relates to the role of DASNY board members and the board as a limited partner in the Social Equity Investment Fund and as a member of the subsidiary as agent for the fund. So DASNY currently maintains a primary insurance coverage, which includes directors and officers liability coverage through National Union Fire Insurance Company, Pittsburgh, PA. In addition, there's excess coverage provided through QBE Insurance Corp and Chubb Ace American Insurance Company. The primary insurance policy does have a $2 million deductible, and we've confirmed that a reserve fund does exist, which has existed since 1997, and which will continue to be maintained. This fund is used in its offset, set aside to pay any amounts which, but for the deductible amount, would be payable under the directors and officers liability policies, which includes the advancement of defense costs. So this would eliminate the potential for board members to have an out-of-pocket expense or liability to pay for counsel to get dismissed from any action without the need for seeking reimbursement from DASNY and to cover that deductible expenditure. So additionally has been the practice with other subsidiaries of DASNY's. The members of the new DASNY subsidiary will also be covered under the directors and officer liability insurance policy in place for SC or Social Equity Servicing Corp board members. So as reflected in the memos, and I've provided a lot of materials for the board's consideration, I conclude that the proper coverages are in place and in effect for each board member under our D&O policy. The indemnification language in the bylaws and relevant statutes and other documents protect DASNY and the board members, similar to our other activities. And finally, the last issue that I wanted to turn to before I turn to the resolution was a question regarding my role as general counsel. I just wanted to make sure that the board and the members of the public were aware of the provision with the DASNY's bylaws, which specifically indicate at section 6.7 thereof, that the general counsel shall be the chief legal officer of DASNY and shall supervise and direct the activities of the office of counsel, advise and render opinions to the officers and the board as to all legal matters relating to the administration, operations, and financing of DASNY, and as the laws governing the programs of DASNY. Draft and examine and review all legal compliance forms, contracts, and other documents necessary for all phases of DASNY's works or purposes, coordinate with and assist bond counsel in the preparation of all documents related to the sale of DASNY obligations and the investment proceeds, and exercise such other powers and perform other duties as the executive director may determine. I just wanted to, again, to assure the board that I do take my role seriously, and I remain available to the board members who have any questions regarding this program and any other matter pertaining to DASNY and its subsidiaries. So that concludes my presentation. And if there are no questions, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn to the resolution seeking the board's approval of the limited partnership agreement. I also have the Squires, the attorneys from Squires available if there are any additional questions regarding the LPA.
Nadine, let me ask, are there any questions for Nadine or for Jeff or for Chris?
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. I just had one preliminary question. The change from the 4 million to the 20, how many projects does that relate to, Nadine, approximately?
Well, we can't say
Jerry.
specifically. Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jerry. Our goal is to get 15 to 20 dispensaries open by year end, and the $20 million will give us sufficient money to do that.
Okay, I follow. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want for the record to say that I'm going to abstain from this vote, and I object to the way that the issue was handled. It's very clear that comments were not welcome. The memo was circulated at 4 o'clock yesterday. The limited partnership agreement that we're voting on is unmarked. I can see that there were changes, but I can't see what they were. And I, for the record, would note that this is a new tactic in the way that things have been handled by this board since 2014 when I joined it.
John, thank you. Thank you. Are there other questions for Nadine, Jeff, and Chris? I do have one, and it's, will it be or has it been necessary to revise the bylaws for this new direction?
No,
because the DASNY bylaws?
Yes, the DASNY bylaws. I'm sorry.
no, there'd be no reason to revise the bylaws. We've revised the bylaws pertaining to the Social Equity Servicing Corporation. There's been a previous amendment to our investment policies in connection with DASNY's investment into the private fund. So there has been amendments to policy, but not to the bylaws.
Okay, fair enough. That was my question. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, are you going to present the resolution, Nadine, or shall I?
Whichever is your preference, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
The resolution seeks the board's approval and authorization to execute the limited partnership agreement on terms and conditions agreed upon between the authority and the Social Equity Impact Ventures GP1 LLC, and further authorizes DASNY and DASNY's authorized officers to make any necessary non-material changes to the agreement subsequent to such approval.
Does it define materiality?
It does not.
Okay. Are there questions about the resolution? If hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it?
So moved.
Thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Janice. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Are there any abstentions?
Right here, abstaining.
Thank you very much, John. I think that means that the resolution has passed. The motion carries, the resolution is passed with one abstention. It's been a long road, but I think we're just coming to the beginning. I thought that was funny. I'm sorry. Is there any other business to come before this board? Let me say once again that John Johnson's celebration on the 11th of October is going to be very special. He and Susan, his wife, will be there. Mr. President, unless there's an objection, I'm going to bring my wife, and I'm going to do that and say that on the record because the Johnsons were kind enough to host us at their beautiful home on the St. Lawrence River years ago, and she has asked to come. As I say, I want that on the record so that you won't forget that I asked. It is important that the members now who know and knew John, do what you need to do to be in New York City at 28 Liberty. It should be a terrific celebration. And John and Susan Johnson are going to be thrilled if there's a large crowd there. And if the board members have found a way to be there. That's it. Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to adjourn? I'm sorry, unless there are comments or questions. May I have a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting?
Al, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question on the October 11th. What time is the John Johnson event?
It's supposed to start, Wellington, immediately after the Finance Committee meeting, which usually starts at 4 o'clock. So, 4:30 at the latest.
Okay. The reason for my asking is I normally have hearings that day, so I will make sure that I be recused and join you all there.
Thank you very much, Wellington. It would be very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know where I was. I asked for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. It was seconded, I think.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
second it.
Well, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Nobody's going to abstain from a vote to adjourn a meeting, so I won't ask. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we have another meeting? What happened? We don't, that's it. We're done now?
Yes, that's it.